who, in your opinion, Stephen, is the biggest NBA bust of all time?
NBA bust? How about Anthony Bennett, the number 1 overall pick of the Cleveland Cavaliers? I mean, you could put Kwame Brown, but how about Anthony?
What is a bust? It's one of the most charged words in sports. It implies failure. It implies a lack of talent. But if you look closely at the history of the draft, you realize that definition is wrong. A second-round pick who falls out of the league in 2 years is unfortunate. A number 1 overall pick who has the same fate is labeled a bust. Both players had the same outcome, but the reaction is clearly different. So what changed? The expectation. A bust isn't a measurement of ability. It's a measurement of the gap between what we were promised and what we received. But why does that gap exist? And how can scouts who watch thousands of hours of film get it so wrong? We often blame it on heart or laziness, but the truth is usually more mechanical. We fail to predict busts because we look at a prospect as a collection of separate attributes rather than a single fragile ecosystem. We see the individual parts, but we ignore how those skills synergize and amplify each other, and how changes in environment can drastically disrupt the health of that ecosystem for some players. To understand this ecosystem, we have to start with the base layer. In the draft, we fall in love with raw skill. We see a player shooting 45% from 3 in college, and we write down elite shooter on the scouting report. But in the NBA, a skill does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a body, and that body can act as a modifier. Think of it as like a damage multiplier in a video game. Physical traits, height, wingspan, burst, are the passive multipliers that determine the actual value of a skill. Take 2 players with the exact same shooting ability. Player A is 6'2" with a low release. Player B is 6'10" with a high release. On an empty gym floor, they are identical. But in the NBA, player A's shooting is vulnerable to the defense. It can be contested, it can be bothered. Player B's shooting, think Michael Porter Jr. or Kevin Durant, is immune to the contest. This is where we find what I like to call the false positive bust, where we think we can bank on one elite skill a prospect can lean on without considering if their physical traits negatively impact it once they get to the NBA. Players like Jimmer Fredette had an elite skill, shooting, but he had a negative physical modifier. His lack of size and burst nerfed his shooting ability at the NBA level. Another case study to look at is Anthony Bennett and Derek Williams. In college, their physical modifier was a cheat code. At 6'8", 240 plus pounds, they were stronger than every college forward and faster than every college center. They didn't need complex moves. They relied on their physical dominance. But once they got to the NBA, that modifier evaporated. Suddenly, everyone is 6'8", and everyone is 240 pounds. Bennett was suddenly too slow to beat NBA small forwards and too small to bully NBA power forwards. His talent, his touch, his scoring package didn't disappear, but the physical modifier that powered it dropped from a 2 times multiplier to a 0. Because his talent relied on a physical advantage that no longer existed, his entire ecosystem collapsed. He was forced to develop counter skills like shooting or perimeter defense to survive, and he couldn't do it. Contrast this with Zion Williamson. On paper, he has the same tweener profile as Bennett. Undersized power forward, no real jump shot. So why didn't he bust in the same way? Because his physical modifier is an outlier. Bennett's athleticism was great. Zion's athleticism was generational. Even in the NBA, Zion is still stronger and faster than everyone else. His multiplier never dropped because he retained that physical dominance. He didn't need to develop the shooting or defense to compensate. On top of this, he had a great handle. His skill set with these physical modifiers made sense on an NBA court, whereas Bennett and Derek Williams didn't. But physical traits aren't the only thing that modifies skills. This brings us to the second layer, skill synergy. This is where active skills interact to unlock each other. In the modern NBA, very few skills are valuable in isolation. There can exist partner skills that amplify them. Let's take a look at shooting again. Static shooting is valuable, but if you pair shooting with an elite handle, the value doesn't just double, it skyrockets. The handle modifies the shooting. It allows you to take shots off the dribble. It turns a spacer into a pull-up threat or shot creator. The same thing applies to movement shooting. Being able to stop, realign, and fire off a 100% sprint brings exponentially more value to an offense than static shooting. But this works in reverse too, and it's the hidden killer of top prospects. Think of it like an armor set in an RPG like World of Warcraft or RuneScape. Sure, you can wear pieces of the armor, but if you don't have the full set, you don't get the full stat bonus. The gear won't function as intended, and you'll run into issues at later levels. This applies to basketball skills as well. It's why you see people use the term skill set. Take Killian Hayes. As a prospect, his passing and handle were promising, and as a big guard, the hope was he could develop into a high-level pick-and-roll operator. But to open up passing lanes as a creator, you need the defense to collapse on you. To make the defense collapse, you must be a threat to score. However, his limited burst and poor pull-up shooting created a dysfunctional skill system. He lacked a full armor set to function at the NBA level. The defense stayed at home, the lanes closed, and his high-level passing vision was rendered useless. He didn't fail because he couldn't pass. He failed because he lacked the skill set that would amplify his passing. It's a similar case with Jahlil Okafor as well. He possessed tremendous footwork in an advanced low-post scoring game. However, he struggled to make reads and pass out when he drew attention. He also wasn't a threat to face up and shoot as well. He couldn't amplify his post scoring with playmaking or shooting and become a legit post creator. When you combine that with his defense, then you get a defective skill set in today's game. So we have physical modifiers and skill synergies, but there's one final component to the ecosystem. It's a component that buys you time. Development in the NBA is not a straight line. It takes years, but to develop you need reps, and to get reps you have to stay on the floor. On competitive teams, think of every minute on the court as something you have to buy, and different skills have different exchange rates. Defense and rebounding are a more stable currency. They are more effort-based. If you're 6'9" and hustle, you can quote-unquote pay rent on a winning team, even if you miss every shot. This buys you the low-pressure time to fix your game and slowly build. Shooting is a more volatile currency. Yes, you can stay on the floor purely as a spacer, think Grady Dick or Duncan Robinson, but the cost is higher. You have to be elite immediately. If your shot isn't falling and you don't defend, you are evicted from the rotation. But what if you're drafted onto a bad team without any expectations? Some rookies get free rent. They play 30 minutes a night not because they earned it, but because the team is trying to lose. For prospects who project as on-ball creators or players who want to experiment at game speed, these constant reps are crucial, but for others it can often be a mirage. Higher-end role players and complementary players have to be sharp and be able to play on both ends. Because they aren't paying rent, they never need to learn the survival skills. They develop empty calorie habits, and the moment that team tries to win, that player becomes obsolete. Out of everything we went through in this video, I think the biggest reason scouts get it wrong and players end up busting is that they aren't drafting a robot. They are drafting a human being, and the human element is the one variable you cannot quantify. Unless you have deep CIA level intel, you don't truly know who a prospect is until they step foot in your building. This is when you really start to understand what type of person you just drafted. For many of the great players in the league, the draft is just a starting line. But for many busts, the draft was the finish line. Their dream wasn't to dominate the NBA or excel. Their dream was to make the NBA. Once the handshake happens and the millions hit the bank account, the hunger vanishes. They lose the drive to grind through the hard days. And on top of that, you have the environment shock. In college, these players are insulated, structured schedules, campus bubbles. Then suddenly, at 19 years old, they are given millions of dollars, total freedom, and are told to perform in the highest pressure job in their industry. Ask yourself, how would you have handled all that at age 19? Some would thrive, but many of us would wilt, and there is almost no way to predict which one you will be on draft night. And finally, there's the gatekeeper of all talent, confidence. We often see players develop a skill in the league, suddenly hitting threes or making complex reads. The truth is, they likely work on that skill for years. They repped it thousands of times in an empty gym. But a skill is useless without the confidence to attempt it. This is why the draft remains a mystery. We can measure the vertical leap, we can measure the wingspan, but we can never measure what goes on in a player's mind. So, the next time we look at a bust, we need to stop looking at the player as a list of isolated attributes. We need to see the full ecosystem. It is a delicate balance between multiple variables. Physical modifiers that determine the ceiling of your skills, the skill synergy that unlocks your skill set, the economy of minutes that helps you buy the time to grow, and the human variable, the resilience to survive the shock of the league. These aren't separate buckets, they're deeply interconnected. If the human confidence wavers, the skill refuses to manifest. If the defense slips, the economy of minutes might bankrupt you, and development will stop. If just one part of the ecosystem fails, the rest of it can starve. Talent is just potential energy. The ecosystem is the machine that turns it into kinetic energy. And when we see a bust, we aren't usually looking at a lack of talent. We're looking at a broken machine.